What's going on, people? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to share 3 buy-to-let tips that could help you when buying properties and trying to grow your portfolio. In fact, there's a few extra tips if you stay till the end. Now, if you have a new property or you've yet to purchase a buy-to-let, then I highly urge you to watch this video over here. It will not only explain what a buy-to-let is in more detail, but it will give you a lot of basics that a lot of videos don't go through. And with that all out of the way, and reminding you all to obviously smash the like button, well, smash the hell out of the like button, let's jump straight into this video. So one of the things we need to look at is the sweet spot. And the importance behind this first tip is to know what you are after in terms of your goals. Are you buying buy-to-lets for monthly cash flow to reduce your hours at work perhaps, or bring in some extra income to suit your lifestyle? Or are you simply buying these investment properties for your future self or maybe future generations, and you're maybe happy just sticking them on a repayment mortgage and just have the rent cover the mortgage payments and not necessarily relying upon that cash flow? Now, these are really important questions. You must decide why you are investing, obviously, before you begin, and you must have this conversation with yourself. Because let's say you want to do the latter and you just want to lump some cash into some properties and have them rented out and pay down that mortgage. You may actually be better off buying slightly more expensive properties and bank on capital appreciation exceeding the lower cost properties. And with a long-term view in place, your house could have maybe doubled in price and you made a sound investment that hopefully doesn't cost you much along the way. However, for those of you who may be a little bit like myself, who have this desire to not only replace their 9 to 5, but also get your time freedom back and do the things that you love to do, you may need to ensure, like myself, that the cash flow can help your living situation as much as possible from your assets. And I did this firstly by opting for an interest-only mortgage, and there's a video here if you need a breakdown of the pros and cons against the repayment mortgage. And secondly, what I did is I made sure I hit that sweet spot in terms of investing in buy-to-lets at the right price that gave the right rent. And essentially this is buying a property at the lowest price point where you can get the highest possible rent. So essentially buying low where rents are as high as possible. Now, of course, that sounds like a bit of a dream, right? But it's actually not that difficult if we just break it down. You see, you could buy a house for £100,000 that would rent for £600 per calendar month. But on the same token, you could also buy a house for £125,000 that again would rent for £600 per calendar month. Now, the first obvious difference here is you're going to need at least an extra £6,000 plus just for the deposit of the second house. And the second point is the mortgage will obviously be a lot higher as well. So what does that mean? Well, it will instantly reduce your capital available for growing your portfolio quicker, and also the net cash flow that you're getting home every single month will be reduced too. So for me, it's kind of like a no-brainer to stick to the properties at £100,000 rather than spending an extra £20,000, £30,000 when the rental income isn't really going to go up by spending more on that property. You see, rents don't simply rise in parallel to house prices. Excluding luxury homes, there is only so much rent you can actually achieve from properties. So knowing that, you need to find your sweet spot. And if this is your strategy of getting time freedom back and maximum cash flow, I promise you it's going to serve you well. Now let's talk a little bit about tax. But before I begin, I have to obviously say I'm not a financial advisor or an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, so please do speak to a professional on this. And by all means, run through whatever I say in this video with them, but address it with your own personal circumstances to get the best situation for yourselves. But there are some important points I think you need to hear and you need to know. With Section 24 obviously now kicked in, private landlords are unable to deduct mortgage interest payments from their rental income when calculating their tax at the end of the year. Now, if you are in a basic tax bracket, landlords can take advantage of a new 20% tax credit on their interest. And this rule will make the change somewhat, I suppose, kind of neutral. It kind of levels it out. But if the rental income you declare takes you into a higher tax bracket, you could find yourself at a slight loss and paying more tax. Now, what I'm going to do is obviously give you an example, because I think examples really help. And I'll share one that I found on the Times website, so I can't take credit for it right now. So let's calculate the buy-to-let tax. And let's assume that monthly it brings in £1,000 and the mortgage interest payments are £400. We're ignoring other expenses that can be set against tax just for this example. So your annual rent is £12,000 and the annual interest paid is £4,800. Now, the tax on the annual rental income is as follows. If you pay 20% tax, you'll be paying £2,400. Whereas if you pay 40% tax, you'll be paying £4,800. Now, tax credit on the interest, i.e. 20% on the 4,800, is £960. The tax bill you have to then pay for a basic rate taxpayer is 2,400 minus the 960, which equals 1,440. However, for a high rate interest taxpayer is 4,800 minus 960, leaving you with £3,840 to pay. So what does this mean? Well, basically under the previous tax rules before April 2020, when both owners could deduct their interest payments from the rental income before calculating their tax, we had different figures. So essentially, 12,000 minus 4,800 would give you 7,200, and this would be the figure that they would be taxed on. Now for the lower rate taxpayer, they would pay the same, £1,440, which is 20% of 7,200. However, the higher rate taxpayer paid less, 2,880 to be exact. So in fact, these new laws are actually hitting them harder. So if you are in that situation, you need to be mindful. And this is essentially where people move towards incorporating properties into limited companies and buying them there. But remember, as with every route you take, there are pros and cons. And for you guys, what I am going to try and do is get an expert on this channel to maybe answer some of your questions, but please do seek professional advice before going into a limited company or buying it in your personal name. And finally guys, the point I wanted to run through with you guys now, which is often overlooked, is the ability to afford to run a buy-to-let portfolio. You see, I see a lot of investors speaking about throwing their last £20,000 of savings or £30,000 of savings all down on a property. And although I think it's amazing, by the way, that they can save that much and you have the discipline in order to do so, I do worry that throwing all of your money into one property without knowing the true cost of buy-to-let is slightly dangerous. You see, there are a lot of new landlords to the market, and without truly being a landlord for a number of years, you won't truly know the costs associated with it. You could read about them, but if you haven't experienced them, it's very difficult to get the true representation of what it's actually like. And for that reason, guys, what I want to do is give you some things to factor. The first is I would recommend having 3 to 6 months of mortgage costs aside when you purchase the property, just as a buffer. Even if you are confident of renting it out, or you've even rented it out, having 3 to 6 months of extra payments for the mortgage to begin with is good practice, and you won't be struggling or having nightmares if you end up with a nightmare tenant. The second is, no matter what you do, put 10% away every month for voids and maintenance. Even if the house is brilliant, I promise you, you're going to need it at some stage. And finally guys, have you thought about the interest rates? What if they increase? Can you afford the new payments? Even if you are fixed on a 5-year term, for example, things can change massively in 5 years, as we've seen in the last few years ourselves. So don't overlook this, guys. Please stress test your rates and see, can you still live comfortably or manage to pay your bills if perhaps they go up? So don't overlook it, guys, please. And also guys, if you manage to stick around until this part of the video and hear me ramble on, I just want to say once again, thank you for sticking around when you guys could have been doing anything, but you chose to spend a few moments with me, which makes you pretty awesome. And with that, I am truly grateful. So until next time guys, don't forget to smash that like button, and I wish you an awesome day. Thanks for watching.